Hey everyone. All right, thanks for joining me. Today's challenge is to take this super cool car poster and we're going to convert it into an HTML file. And I know, you're asking yourselves, why would I do that? Well, it's part tutorial, part challenge, stretch goal, call it whatever you like. Let's dive in and learn a little HTML and CSS. And if you're new to those technologies, you're in the right place. This will introduce you to some foundational concepts and give you a chance to work with some advanced layout and presentation properties. All right, so like I said, we have a poster, and this is just an image I downloaded from an internet search. It's showing some kind of legacy dots in here. It's framed by this kind of graphical rising sun. And the whole poster, mostly we can do in HTML and CSS. We will exclude the car from that. I'll show you how to extract that from the image in a later episode. Today's goal is really just to get our setup completed, and then we'll get into some actual coding in the next episode. So to work on any front-end project, you need a few things. You need a place to store your files, you need a text editor or an IDE to create and edit them in, and then you need a web browser to view them in. And let's start there. Web browsers, so I have two open here. I have Chrome on the left with my poster in it, and then I have Firefox over here on the right. And so I'm going to be refreshing Firefox to view my work, and then I'll be referencing the original image over here in Chrome. There are other browsers. You can use Microsoft Edge, you can use Safari. There's several options. And then for IDEs, so I tend to use Visual Studio Code, but you can use whatever you like. You can even just use Notepad++ or text editor. You can write HTML and CSS in almost any type of editor, honestly. It's just IDEs make it a little bit easier. They do indentation, code formatting, all those sorts of things. So, all right. Well, let's get started. So the first thing is we need to create a project directory, and you can name it whatever you like. I called mine auto HTML conversion, but you could call it car graphic, anything you want, and just put it somewhere on your system where you know where it is. So I moved mine into the sites directory, and okay, so first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this index and we'll call it index.html. All right, so that's good. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder here. And here, I'm actually going to take this, I'm going to save this into my images directory, and I'm just going to call it car graphic. It's a JPEG, so I'll name it like that. You can see in the URL bar up here, it's actually .jpg, so I know it's a JPEG, so I'm just going to use that extension. All right, and so there is our car graphic, and there's our index file. And the next thing we're going to do is create another new folder called styles. All right, now in engineering, in general, good practice, you should try to organize your files according to type, and there is a whole sort of anyway, big concern around sort of file naming conventions, capitalization, formatting, consistency, all these sorts of things. So here I'm basically just organizing my images into a separate directory, and then I'm going to organize my style sheets into a separate directory. And really, this just makes it easier for other people who are working on the project with you to, you know, come back in and scan the files and quickly be able to orient themselves and logically figure out where things are located. So, all right, and then inside of styles, I'm going to create another new file, and this one's going to be our CSS file. So this is where all of our styles will live, and I'm just going to call this, typically I would just call it styles.css. I'll just call it project styles. Maybe I'll call it car poster styles. There we go. All right. So with that, our setup is pretty much complete. And from next episode, we'll jump into the index file, jump into the CSS styles, and just create some kind of dummy code here and refresh it in the browser and make sure that everything's being pulled correctly, and go from there. All right, thanks. I'll catch you next time.